All right, let's dive right into this explainer. Today, we're exploring how the single most authoritative thing in a room, a map, can be catastrophically, mind-bogglingly wrong. I mean, think about it. Have you ever looked at a map and just completely, blindly trusted what you saw? We all do. It feels like the absolute truth, right? It's printed, it's meticulously measured, and it guides us. But today, we're going to look at what actually happens when that ultimate source of truth turns out to be nothing more than a copied mistake.
Picture this scenario. It's 2009, and two governments are sitting across a table fiercely arguing over a massive, incredibly valuable oil zone in the Gulf of Mexico. It's a super high-stakes negotiation, and all the boundary lines are being drawn based on standard maritime maps. But when negotiators went to actually find the specific island that was anchoring this whole claim, it had completely vanished. The water was just empty.
And the sheer scale of this problem is absolutely staggering. We aren't just talking about a small patch of sand here or some minor geographic curiosity. That missing piece of land dictated the rights to 22.5 billion barrels of oil. Let that sink in. An entire economic fortune essentially rested on a piece of geography that didn't physically exist.
So what exactly are we dealing with here? Well, this brings us to a fascinating cartographic phenomenon known as phantom islands. Basically, these are places drawn on real maps, sometimes staying there for centuries, that were never actually there in the first place. And why this matters so much is because people didn't just treat them as fun little myths, they treated them as concrete reality. They sailed to them, they drew national borders around them, drilled near them, and in some really tragic cases, they actually died trying to reach them. Okay, part one, the 7th century map virus.
Let's start by rewinding all the way back to the 1300s to understand exactly how a mapmaker's simple mistake can spread just like a virus. Out west of Ireland, a mythical island called High Brazil appeared on charts in 1325 as Briseil. It gets copied to new charts in the 1360s, it's included in the famous Catalan Atlas of 1375, and incredibly, it wasn't officially removed from maps until 1873. Why did this happen? Well, mapmakers back then couldn't exactly physically verify every single location, so they just copied from older charts. To a cartographer, an empty ocean looked, unprofessional. So an unverified island was just traced over and over and over again. 700 years. That is the really crucial point here. A purely mythical island, literally wrapped in mist and imagination, survived unofficial world maps for 7 centuries. It was trusted by kings and expert navigators alike. That is 700 years of people believing in a place simply because someone drew a circle of ink and the next guy was too afraid to leave the paper blank. Moving on to Section 2, Chasing the Deadly Mirage.
Now, you might be thinking these are just quaint historical typos. But let's jump to 1906 in the freezing Arctic and see how this builds into something legitimately deadly. We had this stark contrast between belief and reality. The explorer Robert Peary claimed to look out over the Arctic ice and see an island he named Crocker Land. He confidently reported seeing hills, valleys, and snow-capped peaks right on the horizon. But when Donald Macmillan's 1913 expedition marched for 5 grueling days across the pack ice to reach it, an Inuit hunter traveling with them named Pugatok correctly identified what they were looking at. He called it Pugiok, a single word meaning mist or an illusion. And this perfectly, brilliantly illustrates something called a fata morgana. It's a terrifying illusion where your eyes actually aren't lying to you, but the light itself is being bent. Layers of air at different temperatures distort the light, stretching a low strip of distant ice into what looks exactly like a towering, solid coastline. They were quite literally chasing a phantom born of temperature and light. The tragic cost of chasing that bent light was absolutely immense. Because the expedition pushed forward into the ice toward an illusion, they missed their retrieval window. The men ended up being trapped in the Arctic ice for 4 agonizing years. And during that horrific ordeal, Pugatuk, the one man who actually recognized the illusion for what it was from the start, was shot and killed by another team member while they were stranded. A real, actual human life was lost chasing bent light. Which leads us to Section 3, War over an Invisible Line. So we've seen how mirages kill, but what happens when nations decide to mobilize actual armies to defend a phantom geography? After the 1783 treaty between the US and British Canada, a border was drawn based on what the map promised, a nice, precise highlands ridge dividing the rivers. But what the land delivered when surveyors actually walked into the wilderness was a totally different story.
That specific, unarguable ridge simply did not physically exist. The map promised a clean, neat line that the chaotic geography of the Earth completely refused to deliver. And this wasn't just a minor polite disagreement. During the 1838 Aroostook War escalation, lumberjacks literally start clashing in this disputed forest. In response, Maine goes ahead and appropriates $800,000 and calls up 10,000 volunteer militiamen. Meanwhile, British troops are marching straight down from Quebec. You have two of the most powerful nations on Earth nearly going to full-scale war, spending vast sums of money over a boundary nobody could actually locate in reality. And the wildest part? It was only settled when an American negotiator produced a supposedly archived map featuring a red line drawn by Ben Franklin, so they settled the dispute entirely on paper. This brings us to a pretty chilling realization about human nature. People will mobilize armies to defend a line they cannot find. Borders are really just beliefs printed on paper, and history clearly shows us that we are absolutely willing to fight, bleed, and spend vast fortunes for those beliefs, even if the ground beneath our feet doesn't match the ink. All right, Section 4, the billion-barrel mystery, which loops us back perfectly to our highest stakes mystery in the Gulf of Mexico, and how this plays out in our modern era of resources. Let's return to the island of Bermeja. Back in 1539, it was mapped by a respected Spanish cartographer. For centuries, it sat quietly off the Yucatan Peninsula on chart after chart. But fast forward to the late 1990s, maritime law suddenly made its location the absolute key to claiming massive offshore oil reserves. So Mexico naturally went searching for it. By 2008, things escalated to the point where Mexican senators were publicly claiming the island had been destroyed. The geopolitical fallout from this was massive. Mexico sends research ships out to plant the flag, but they find only empty sea. Because the island's absence directly shrank Mexico's oil claim right in the middle of negotiations with the U.S., 6 Mexican senators actually alleged the CIA had bombed the island out of existence to steal the oil rights. I mean, they literally could not believe the map was wrong. However, an official scientific study for the Mexican Congress concluded the truth. Bermeja almost certainly never existed in the first place. It really just boils down to this. The map said land, the water said nothing. The scientific reality was much quieter, but honestly far more bizarre than any conspiracy theory. A country likely lost billions of dollars purely because an island everyone had blindly trusted for 400 years was just a phantom. Finally, Section 5, Ghosts on Modern Maps. Now, if you're sitting there thinking, well, this is just a problem of dusty old parchment, candlelight, and ancient explorers, consider a digital glitch from November 2012. This number is just staggering. 1,300. An Australian research ship sailed straight to where an island called Sandy Island was supposed to be in the Coral Sea and found 1,300 meters of deep, open ocean abyss. There was nothing there.
Let's walk through how this modern deletion happened. Sandy Island had been charted since Captain Cook's era. It was perfectly, clearly visible right there on Google Maps. The Southern Surveyor ship decides to sail directly to the coordinates and discovers only that deep ocean abyss. Think about that for a second. That very morning, the entire digital world agreed Sandy Island was solid ground. But within days of the ship finding nothing, this 200-year-old phantom was deleted with a single, simple keystroke. Poof. Gone.
The ultimate takeaway from this explainer is actually pretty simple. The map is not the world. A map feels like the absolute truth. It looks clean, it's confident and authoritative, but it's really just a copied, inherited story about the world that we rarely ever bother to double-check. We trust the lines on our screens so much that we completely forget to look at the land itself. So as we wrap things up today, I want to leave you with a somewhat unsettling question to chew on. Next time you look at a border, a property line, or even a GPS route, ask yourself how many of the lines you trust right now were ever actually there. Thanks for exploring this with us. Keep your eyes open and never stop questioning the world around you.